Welcome back to another episode of Come Back Stronger, where we bring you stories from around the world of people who have overcome injuries, obstacles, and setbacks and have come back stronger.
That's right.
Yes, and so today we're super excited to introduce you to Monica Nyriaguhabwa, who I'm just going to call Monica.
All right.
And so Monica is a Uganda native. She's a very impressive woman. She grew up in Uganda, which according to her is an area where society suppresses little girls and suppresses women. And so she grew up, and for her this was painful to watch her brothers. She was basically treated as a second-class citizen, and she had to see her brothers uplifted in front of her. And so she has changed the world by starting an initiative in Uganda called Girl Up Uganda. So Kimmy, by the way, introducing you to Kimmy Hogan, my law partner. Kimmy had the privilege of interviewing Monica. And so, Kimmy, what do you think about her?
Yeah, she's incredible. So in her interview, she talks about how, first of all, you got to pay for your kids to go to school. And so if a family only has enough money in Uganda, then they would pay for their boys to go to school. And so sometimes she wouldn't get to go to school because her parents couldn't afford the fees. She also talks about how a lot of times women and girls will turn to selling sex because they can't afford to go to school, they can't afford food. And so one of her initiatives with Girl Up Uganda is teaching girls how to be resilient to that and ways to not have to do that. She also talks about period poverty, which is something that we talk about a lot, and we see that here even in Florida in the United States of America, where girls can't go to school because they can't afford period products. And so she's got an initiative that helps with that as well.
Yeah, she is a very, very impressive woman.
Yes.
We're super excited to introduce her to you. We're going to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to hear the first part of the interview with Monica. If you take the case to trial, then you could get a much bigger settlement, because then the insurance company that is defending the case, they have to take a real honest look at it. Sometimes they will settle on the courthouse steps. Sometimes they settle after you've picked a jury. Sometimes they settle after you've given your evidence. I had a case recently where the insurance company had basically offered $50,000. And then 2 months before the trial, we get a $2 million offer. We tried the case, we picked the jury, we put on 2 days worth of evidence, and it ends up settling for $3.7 million.
This defense attorney was drawing a hard line this entire time, saying that my client's injuries were not caused by this crash, which if you look at the damage to the car was definitely not true. And we take it 2 weeks before trial, we're ready to go, and they come in and they say, hey, would you accept $500,000 for this case? And they were offering almost nothing before. It's incredible.
Welcome back to Come Back Stronger, where we're talking to Monica Nyriaguhabwa, who is a Uganda native who has overcome the suppression of women and girls in Uganda and has started her own foundation to change Uganda and the way they think about women and girls. Very impressive woman. Can't wait for you to see the first part of the interview. Take a look.
Monica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you're joining us today from your home in Kampala, Uganda, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And how long have you lived in Uganda?
For all the years I've been on earth, I've always lived in Uganda, but I travel quite frequently.
Okay. Well, and that's part of your program that you started, the Girl Up Initiative, Uganda. And we're going to get into all of that, but I'd like to start first by learning a little bit about you. Tell us about yourself.
So I'm a young woman who was born and raised in the slum communities of Kampala. I've lived in Uganda for all the years that I've been on earth, and my background is one that started with having to navigate the challenges of growing up as a girl, again, in a patriarchal community that did not value girls, for being girls anyways. And of course, this was rooted right from my family. So my background is that one where I had to keep proving to everyone that it's okay to be a girl, it's okay to be who I am, and it's okay for everyone to accept me for being a girl. And so that background growing up in a very tough environment, but also having to navigate my space in my own family is what pushed me really to be a very fierce and hardworking young woman, and right now a global advocate for girls' education. Because just looking at my background, if it wasn't for education, probably I wouldn't be, where I am right now. And I mean, going through these very tough situations helped me understand that, someone needs to put a stop to this. And for me, that's what's really inspired me to start the work that I do at Girl Up Initiative Uganda, and just to be that icon that speaks out on issues that affect girls and women in my country, but also in the different global conversations that I'm part of. So that's part of my background. I definitely went to school in Uganda, and I was so privileged to attain a Commonwealth scholarship that allowed me go abroad to acquire, my graduate studies, which was again a huge privilege, because I realized that the education abroad is quite improved, and I definitely had to put all that together and be able to use all these tools that, education had offered to me to be able to co-start this nonprofit and do the work that I do. So that's a little bit about my background.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. Tell me a little bit about growing up. I know you said you grew up in the slums of Uganda. What was that like as a young girl? Were you able to go to school? What were you told you weren't allowed to go to school? Give us a little bit more detail about that.
So just painting a background on what a slum looks like and what the reality of girls look like growing in these communities is that these are communities that have, I think it's limited of everything, whether it's education, whether it's social services, whether it's schooling. So you can only imagine a young girl having to navigate this complex environment where, for example, at a family level, you're trying to prove your worth. But again, when you step out of your own family, space, you have to prove your worth again, navigating with our male colleagues in school. And then when you look at the environment itself, it's not safe for girls, because you find that slum communities are these that are really populated, so many numbers of people, that drainage isn't the best, is pathetic. You find that the health services aren't the best, the quality of the schools aren't the best. But again, appreciating the little that you have and saying, okay, I may not be going to the best schools, but how do I recognize and appreciate the little that I can have? So for me, I think my background really taught me humility and gratitude, even for the smallest things, because the smaller things gave me the opportunity to navigate and get into the bigger thing. So definitely it's an environment that is tough, especially for children that need to be protected, more so the girls that face double-edged challenges of, for example, being forced into early marriages, being coerced into early pregnancies. It's just a bunch of so many challenges, but I believe that being able to navigate such tough environments is the only option that every girl should aspire to do.
And you mentioned earlier that you had to kind of fight the patriarchy within your own family. Were you pressured to not go to school or to get into an early marriage? What was that like at home?
So I wasn't pressured to do any of that, but I always felt like I always came second. For the limited resources that my family had, I would only attend school if my brother's education fees have been cleared. In Uganda, education is not free. Okay. So you find that of the two of us, the boy came first before myself. So of course, as a child, sometimes certain things don't make sense, but as you grow up, you begin to understand that that was the highest level of discrimination and fairness arising out of the family. But I always knew that yeah, I come second, but I definitely had to be in school. And so just having to navigate situations where sometimes you're chased out of school because your parents have not paid all the dues that are needed. So having to navigate that in terms of having to be in school for some days of the term and having to miss school because your parents have not been able to facilitate your dues on time. So I always felt that my brother came first, and indeed he always came first. But again, I was appreciative of the fact that much as I came second, I still kept in school. But then as I grew up and understood these issues even more deeply and being able to name them, that was patriarchy, then for me, it was an opportunity to challenge this stereotype and say, we need to change the narrative, not only for myself, but even for other girls that have experienced that kind of discrimination and violence.
And that's exactly what you're doing with your Girl Up Uganda initiative. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, but when we come back, I want to hear all about your nonprofit.
I love her.
Yep.
And the reason why I love her is because she is doing it. She is coming back stronger in a big way. And what I mean by that, and what I've always encouraged people to do, is to, when you're looking at what you should be doing with your life, at your mission in life, look at the painful experiences that you've had. Because it's the painful experiences that you have that give you the fire in your belly to do something to change that so that other people don't have to go through it.
Absolutely.
Right? That's what gives you the motivation. So you don't have to get motivated.
Yep.
You don't have to listen to a motivational speaker. You're motivated because of that, of the pain that you've experienced. But you got to think about something. How can you make a change? And she is doing that every single day with Girl Up Uganda. It's interesting to me because she could have gone back. I mean, she was educated abroad.
Yeah.
She could have stayed abroad, but she chooses to go back to Uganda so that she can change the narrative. I love her. She's awesome.
I love it too. And you know, she said in there, when she got older, she was trying to understand why she went through that, why she felt like she was always second, just because she was a girl. And so then she said, I had to figure out what it was, and then I had to name it. And she named it the patriarchy. And so then she said, once I named it, then I could come back and fight it. Right?
That's a very important point, is that you've got to be able to be so self-aware that you can identify that pain, and you actually have to deal with it. Like a lot of the people that we have on the show, is that you have to face it. But when you face it and then you decide, I'm going to do something about it, that's when that fire starts to go. And that's when you could be unstoppable.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. Well, Monica's a very, very impressive woman. We're going to go to a commercial break. But when we come back, we're going to hear the second part of her interview of how she has come back stronger.
I think people don't understand how harmful it can be to wait. Evidence and people are in the wind. You know, if you need a video of something, that could get recorded over within sometimes 24 hours. So it's not, oh, I ran to a lawyer right away. No, I stood up for myself and preserved evidence and preserved my rights.
I had a case where one of my clients got her finger stuck in a door because the door closer had rusted, and the company had done a terrible job of maintaining it. But she came to us within days of having her finger amputated. And it was so important that she did that because I was able to get an expert to fly down to that condominium to inspect the door closer. I mean, we had evidence within 2 weeks, and we were able to get a wonderful settlement for her, but we wouldn't have been able to if she hadn't have called us and
That would have been
contacted
an
us.
entirely different case even 2 or 3 months later.
Welcome back to Come Back Stronger, where we are showing you the interviews of Monica Nyriaguhabwa, who is a Uganda native who has come back stronger from the patriarchy. She's fighting the patriarchy in Uganda that has suppressed women and girls for time immemorial. And so she's a very impressive woman. We'll take a look at the second part of her interview.
All right, Monica, let's talk about the Girl Up Initiative Uganda. When did you start that program?
So I started Girl Up Initiative Uganda in December 2012. And it was my birthday, and I teamed up with my friends and said, I really feel that desire to start up a nonprofit, to start a movement. I wouldn't call it a nonprofit at that time. For me, it was about a movement that comes together to support and amplify the voices of girls while supporting to address some of the challenges that I myself faced growing up in the slum community. So the idea was birthed in December 2012. And since then, Girl Up exists to be able to be that organization that is building a vibrant movement of girls for them to thrive and lead. Because we know that if we invested in girls' leadership, if we invested in girls' education, if we invested in girls' sexual and reproductive health rights education and services, then the returns in terms of community development are equally huge. So for me, it was about tapping into my own life experiences and, you know, when you turn a curse into a blessing and saying, how do I then bring together my experiences to challenge the narrative and to be able to lead a movement. And so that's how Girl Up started. And of course, our work predominantly is around the girl child, because we know that girls face more deeper challenges. We do recognize that boys equally face challenges, but for us, we know that coming from a patriarchal environments, girls face even much deeper challenges. So our programming is really centered around the girls. And over the years, we've learned in this work that we cannot work with girls alone. So we've been able to pivot our methodology to bring on board all the community stakeholders that are important to ensure that this girl thrives both in the home environment, the school environment, but also the whole community environment. So we do work with a girl through our different programming, but also we engage men and boys, because we know that if we are to challenge certain negative stereotypes that are not helpful, then it's important that boys and men are brought into the conversation to understand these stereotypes and how they themselves can be the champions of change to fellow men. Because we know that in our experience, that when a young woman speaks to a young man, there could be limited chances of that man taking that message seriously. But when you work with a team of young men and help them understand the issues more deeply, then they become the agents of change. So over time, we've been able to bring on board boys and men into our programming, but also recognizing that religious and cultural leaders are quite influential people that we have in our communities. So working with all these stakeholders to make sure that we preach the same message, we support the girls, so that our work doesn't face so much backlash coming from the different communities that do not appreciate or understand the issues of girls. So I would say that over the years, we've pivoted around ensuring that we create safer and inclusive communities for girls to thrive. So that's what we do. And we are so proud of the over 100,000 lives that we've been able to touch in the last 10 years of doing this impactful work in Uganda.
Wow, 100,000 lives. That's incredible. Tell me about the work that you're doing to help young women with period poverty, where they don't have the proper products to go to school when they're menstruating. What are y'all doing in that realm?
The Girl Up programs recognize that menstruation is one of the leading factors of girls dropping out of school, because not every girl or every young woman can afford to buy a menstrual kit that she can use. So a menstrual kit costs about maybe $2, but again, you find that on average, a bigger percentage of Ugandans live below $1. So you can imagine a family sacrificing $2 to ensure that they buy a menstrual kit for their daughters. It's close to impossible. So you find that as a program, we do train girls and young women to make reusable menstrual kits so that they themselves use locally available materials, and just knowing how best do they use them to make products out of these materials, so that in terms of sustainability, they are able to have these products with them, whether they have incomes or not, because we know that menstruation is not a choice for women, and it is something that they live with. So how do we come on board to ensure that we recognize that it's a huge challenge? But also through our programming, we've been able to offer menstrual kits to adolescents again. And these menstrual kits are both reusable and disposable ones through our programming, just to make sure that we provide the young women with incentives that support them to stay in school longer.
Absolutely. How is the Girl Up Initiative Uganda, how is that funded?
So Girl Up Initiative Uganda is funded by individuals and foundations. And for most of our funding comes from the US and from Europe. So that's where our funding comes from. Though in our beginning, really, Girl Up started with individuals investing their monies to ensure that we kickstart this work. And then thereafter, institutional funders came on board that, have really supported us in this journey of transforming lives.
Well, we thank you so much for coming on to talk with us about your initiative. And we're going to put up all the links to your program so the folks that are watching the show know how to find you and donate if they feel moved to do so. Thank you so much for all of your work. We appreciate it.
Awesome. So if we invest in girls, the returns are going to be exponential. I love that. I'm paraphrasing what she said, but I really love that because, at our law firm, we are big advocates of women empowerment, girl empowerment. And so I love the fact that we bring Monica on the show, and just to see a whole different perspective of somebody that was brought up in a culture that is still completely ingrained in the suppression of women and girls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. And even here in the States, there are organizations like I'm a part of the Oasis Center for Women and Girls, where we are trying to help women and girls have a safe space and to be empowered and encouraged. Mm-hmm. And some of the same issues are happening here too, like with the period poverty that we talked about. And Monica talks about, as y'all just heard, steps that they're taking for the young women to be able to create their own products to reuse so that they're able to go to school.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, history is going to define each and every one of us by the impact we make on our families, our community, and the world at large. Monica is making a massive impact that's going to have ripple effects that go throughout the world. Mm-hmm. She's working from Uganda, and then she's on a TV show right here in the United States.
Absolutely.
That is a cool thing, is a very big thing.
Absolutely. She was talking about how important it is to have these global conversations.
Yes.
And to raise awareness of what's going on, and she's doing just that.
She's doing just that. Well, so one of the other things that I loved that she said, boys can be the champions of change for fellow men, which is awesome because it can't be just about the girls getting together, empowering each other up. We got to talk to the men. We got to make sure that the men understand how they're contributing to this discrimination. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's not just in Uganda, it's right here in the United States. It still continues to an extent. So, but when you bring up, and what Dana Brooks, our law partner, is big on empowered men, talking about empowered men. Men that are empowered to not hold the power, but to share the power equally as should be with the fellow women.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very important part of this conversation. Anyway, we are going to come back after this commercial break, and we're going to have a lot more to talk about Monica. Coming back. And you know what the insurance company offered him? $5,000. Really? He's completely blind, and they offer him $5,000. Yeah. Ask him to sign a release.
To a lot of people, especially when they're hurting and when they're down and when they're vulnerable, $5,000 is a life-changing amount of money. Yeah. And they're not looking at the value of what has been lost. They're not looking at what it would take to make that person whole, which is our job. Yeah. That's our job. Their job isn't. Their job is to save the insurance company money. Right. And they look at this person and they go, I bet $5,000 would get your full attention. And they come in and they dangle it with a settlement release, and then once you sign it, you're done. You can't come back to us and ask us to wave a magic wand and make that go away. That can't go away.
My client didn't accept the $5,000. We took him all the way to trial. We got a $5 million verdict.
Welcome back to Come Back Stronger, where we just heard the interviews of Monica Nyriaguhabwa. She is such an impressive woman. She started Girl Up Uganda. She is all about empowering girls and women in a society that she lives in where they have historically been suppressed. She's changing the world, making the world a better place. What was your biggest takeaway, Kimmy?
I like how she focused on sustainable changes. You know, she is focused on advocacy and raising awareness and making big changes, but also focusing on what are small things that we can do to make changes right now for the girls that are going through this, such as having the groups where they connect with male leaders in their community to talk to the boys, empowering the girls on how to make their own period products, right?
Yes.
I love it. It's a multifaceted approach. What about you?
Well, one of the takeaways I had was how she said it's important to recognize and appreciate the little that she had.
Yeah.
Right? It was coming from there, from the humble beginnings, that she was able to give her the foundation to be able to rise up and make changes in the world. So I feel like that's great, because when you're out there and your voice loud and you're promoting yourself in a loud voice, you don't necessarily have the power and the impact of somebody who has come from humble beginnings, understands where they come from, doesn't forget where they come from, but is trying to make positive change.
Yep.
That was awesome. That's the whole key to coming back stronger, is to recognize the change you can make in the world and do it, but do it from a place of humility. This has been awesome. Look forward to seeing you the next time.
She contacted me almost in a fugue. She couldn't believe that it happened. And something told her, this is not right.
She had lost her daughter.
This is not right. My little girl should be here, and I'm going to do something about it. She contacted me, and I went to see her, I think that day. And we sat at her dining room table, and she showed me the program from the funeral. And I met her sons and saw her gravesite, and I just told her, I don't know what happened, but I'm going to find out, and we're going to do something about it. And she and I bonded right then, and she's been in my life ever since. And seeing how she has used something that is an unimaginable loss and found some way to live a better life and make a better life for her son. There's nothing better.
The reason why I think that we've been so successful in getting so many referrals from our clients is I'm not just thinking about the case as a transaction. Here, we get you your check at the end of the case and then say goodbye. I'm thinking about building a lifelong relationship with my clients. I see all sorts of referrals coming in from their loved ones and their friends and their family members because they want their